If you've been viewing my channel throughout the year, I'm sure you've noticed a few things. One, this channel's taken a bit more of a positive direction as of recent. I've been talking about things I like, for the most part, but also I've been talking a lot about Sonic the Hedgehog characters. I've made videos on Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, and it's been a very fun time. I've enjoyed it, and I think a lot of you guys have too. But unfortunately, a lot of those character analysis videos have a sad ending, due to a character's rise and then eventual fall due to their recent mistreatment and inconsistencies, but there is one character in Sonic the Hedgehog history who has been consistent throughout his entire existence. No matter how menacing or how goofy, Dr. Eggman has been the glue holding the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise together, essentially. Throughout his almost 30 years of existence, how has Dr. Eggman stayed so consistent and been one of the greatest Sonic the Hedgehog characters of all time? Well, let's take a look at all of the different reincarnations of this character and see what makes Dr. Eggman so special. Being a villain, there's this constant expectation of villainy. And don't get me wrong, Dr. Eggman is a menacing, threatening, and downright evil person at some points. And that should be the case, he's a villain. You can see displays of this in Sonic Sat AM, certain points in Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure 2, obviously, he holds a gun to Amy's head, and while it's quite a goofy performance, Dr. Robotnik is quite dominant in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie over his submissive husband. Nothing wrong with that, it's just they have a strange relationship there. Alright, let's move on. Point being, villains are expected to be angry, maniacal, evil, and in certain scenarios that should definitely be the case with your antagonist. They should be antagonistic, but as I stated, for the most part, because it all applies to the types of stories you tell. One of the reasons I love Eggman so much is because he isn't that stereotypical antagonist. Dr. Eggman is silly. He's goofy. He's funny. He's not Darth Vader. He's not even Bowser, who's a cute little dinosaur man. Look at him. Dr. Eggman is a joke. And that's okay. Often in discussion I hear people bring up that Eggman is no longer the character that he used to be. He's a joke, he's Dr. Doofenshmirtz, and while these characters are very similar, I don't think that's a bad thing, honestly. Everybody has their preferences. It's perfectly fine to like your own versions of certain characters. Some people like Luke Skywalker from the original trilogy, and some people hate Luke Skywalker in the new trilogy. Someone might like Christian Bale's Batman opposed to Ben Affleck's Batman. That's all fine. Nobody is wrong. It's a subjective opinion. And people are allowed to like a grittier and darker Eggman, and people are allowed to like a goofier and lighthearted one. But does this goofy and lighthearted thing make Eggman a bad character now? I don't think so. Here's the deal, as we all know, I've had my issues with modern interpretations of these characters and just the writing as a whole of these new games. I don't like the direction that they've took a lot of my favorite characters. I grew up with these guys, and just seeing the way that they're being treated really hurts me. But I don't feel like this entirely applies to Eggman. I think if there's one character that has been able to stick the harsh landing of a lot of these characters, it's been him. Why is this though? Well, for almost the entire history of Sonic, Eggman has been a seesaw. One side being this happy-go-lucky, goofy Eggman, and the other side being this darker, more evil version of Eggman. Eggman has just never been a character of consistency when it comes to his personality. Yes, he is evil, he wishes for the worst, but he's a goofball while he does it. That's Eggman. Saying that this is the right Eggman and this is the wrong Eggman is just entirely false. There's a difference between right and wrong characterization and writing. Lines like,
Sonic, how I hate him,
are bad lines, yeah, but that doesn't make the character bad. It's not an out-of-character line, it's just monologue lines. This is bad characterization.
Rest assured, they're not dead. Yet.
I'm so bored I want to blow my fucking brains out. Contradiction of what has come before is bad characterization, yes. It's not building upon anything, it's just throwing something away. I'm gonna make another Star Wars comparison, Luke Skywalker. That's right characterization and character development. It's building on what has come before. With an ongoing story, you can't just have these characters be who you want them to be or who you thought they could be, even if you've known that character for a long time. There is no story, however. Sonic the Hedgehog timelines have been all over the place. Every single cartoon has a different continuity. The only solid continuity you had for a decent amount of time was Adventure until Shadow the Hedgehog. Sonic 06 was its own standalone thing, Unleashed was its own standalone thing, and Colors Through Forces is a soft reset essentially. There has never been this one consistent character character, it's always changing and growing. Sonic has had so many different iterations and changes over the time. This isn't Star Wars, this is more like Ninja Turtles or Batman. Same characters, but they just have different personalities and takes in all different versions. Unlike characters such as Sonic or Shadow or even Tails, Eggman has had the luxury of having a multitude of different personalities. As I've mentioned, there's been this spectrum of goofy, evil, and sometimes there's a middle ground, but he's never had this confound character and arc, which makes him a loose character. He just has to be the antagonist. It doesn't matter what kind he is, as long as it's written well. The way that Sonic and Shadow are written into stories, they are forced to have these archetypes that have been delivered to them for the history that they've been around, which does lead to bad interpretations of these characters. Eggman just doesn't have those. Eggman was goofy before he was serious. Even in those classic sprites, Eggman looks like a goofball. This character design is goofy. There is no deterioration of his character because he's extra goofy now. No, he started off this way, and he is that character to this day. There were a couple instances to where he's more toned down and more maniacal, but there's no rule in place, and there's also no history that supports Eggman having to be this serious antagonist. One of the reasons people love Eggman so much is because he's likable. Eggman is the most likable villain I have ever seen, and nothing else exemplifies this better than Sonic Boom. The infamous TV show that ran from 2014 all the way until 2017 is often referred to in the community as Eggman Boom and not Sonic Boom. I think you can put the puzzle pieces together. The show had a lot of Eggman-centric episodes. Specifically in Season 2, the show turns into full-on Eggman Boom, having a significant amount of Eggman-centric episodes, focusing on his character, utilizing his character to its full potential. It was very entertaining, and just watching the sheer incompetence of a villain is funny. It's strange. Whatever you stick Eggman in, it just somehow works. There is no set character for Eggman whatever he goes into. You can expect a handful of different outcomes. You don't know if he's going to be an incompetent joke, or if he's going to be a competent evil human being. Being built upon these two simple personas over the 30 years that Sonic has been around has allowed Eggman to have the chance to be more varied on the multitude of takes of his character. From different video games, to comic books, to TV shows, to a movie now, all have their own Eggman, and they're all pretty different from each other, but they still remain in those two ballparks. This is not me saying there has never been a bad interpretation of Eggman. There has, and unfortunately it's indeed in my favorite video game ever, Sonic 06. They tried to take the toned down approach here. Toned down as in like muted. I don't need Eggman to be extra incompetent, and I don't need him to be extra competent. I just want a well-written character who's fun to watch, and Eggman isn't really that fun to watch in this game, which is why there's not a lot of time spent with him. There's really no goal here aside from ruling the world. In other interpretations, there's him wanting to roboticize people and have his own like Eggman land and stuff like that. But here, no, it's just really just ruling the world. There's no mention of Eggman land or anything like that. There's no showcase of his intelligence, such as genius being blinded by ego. No, it's just basic Bond villain. It's quite the boring interpretation. I'd say the best thing to come out of Eggman in this game is this scene right here.
I can't believe this! Yeah!
Yo, he's dead. But aside from that, it's a pretty disappointing interpretation. But of course, we have to talk about the most recent interpretations of Eggman. Where is he now? How is he being handled? What's going on with him? Well, it's a little complicated. This aforementioned shift in Sonic the Hedgehog writing and depiction that happened in 2010 has been, how do I say this, varied? Over the course of an entire decade, you're gonna get a lot of different things. But the four depictions I want to look at in particular are Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, Sonic Lost World, and Sonic Forces. All four of those games being written by they that shall not be named. From Colors to Lost World, you can see that Eggman is far more goofy. I've been saying goofy a lot. There is this hint of incompetence that comes along with his villainy. He's of course a villain, he's the antagonist, he's doing bad things, but he's still likable and kind of incompetent while he does it. He fumbles around, he's not entirely sure of what he's doing. Some of his ideas are just hilarious, but at sometimes there are these little bursts, specifically in Sonic Lost World, where you can just see an entirely different Eggman come through. It's very interesting to see, and I wish they built upon it more, but at the same time it's somewhat out of character. It just happens. And this did receive a lot of nice responses. Now keep in mind, the louder voices in the Sonic the Hedgehog community are adults, so of course you're gonna have that, oh, I like that because it's more edgy. And I think that came through, because in Sonic Forces, Eggman turns into somewhat of a completely different character. Not entirely, he's somewhat still in character, but they tone him down a lot. He's by far the most evil that he's been in all of them. He accomplishes a lot of his goals. I'd say it's a little more of a cartoonish version of the Sonic 06 Eggman, which I'm not necessarily that big of a fan of. I feel like they heard everybody screaming for a more serious story, but at the same time, Forces doesn't really pull through all the way on some of their concepts and ideas. They kind of half-ass a lot, and that came with characters in the story. They didn't want to go all the way with that dark tone, and they didn't want to go all the way with Eggman's new personality. So it just kind of feels out of place and strange, like everything in Sonic Forces, but I guess we'll see how they handle things in the next game. The character of Dr. Eggman has been able to stick with this nice balance. As Thanos says, perfectly balanced as all things should be. Eggman has been a consistent character of inconsistency, and it has worked surprisingly. Eggman has always been the goofball, but sometimes he's also been serious and evil. I've heard a lot from my fans that they missed the Eggman that was serious, they missed the adventure Eggman. Well, that's not the Eggman. There's this misconception that Eggman was a dark and intimidating villain all the time, when that is simply not the case. There's been a lighthearted and a dark Eggman for the entire time that he's been around. There is no right and wrong Eggman. As long as it's entertaining and is an interesting character to follow, does that really make him a bad character because he's goofy now? Even when he's goofy, he's still able to get those shocks out of you, like, wow, this guy is scary. Even while he looks like, you know, the way he looks. Eggman is Eggman, one of the most iconic characters in all of history, and without a doubt, one of, if not the best Sonic character of all time.